3rd Historic Preservation meeting to order. This is calling to order part 1, which will be conducted between 9:30 and 10:45. There'll be a brief 15-minute recess to 11 o'clock, and then at 11 o'clock we will change to the Zoom's platform and hear agenda item 9A. So if you have joined and you're here for agenda item 9A, sit tight. It will be conducted at 11 o'clock this morning. Seated with me today are Karen Gilbart, the Vice Chair, Marguerite Carnell, Margaret Faber, Leah Glazer, is Christine Nelson on yet? Yes, she is.
Yes.
Yep. Sarah Sportman and Walter Woodward. So in order to streamline the review process of our agenda, I'd like to reorder the agenda to hear 8A, which is First Church of Christ Congregational Suffield, that was tabled at our February 2nd meeting, and I'd like to bring it forward to be heard after agenda item 5D and before agenda item 11. And we can do that with a unanimous vote to reorder. So all those in favor of reordering, I will do a roll call vote. Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Margaret Faber.
Aye.
Karen Gilbart.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Christine Nelson.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstaining. Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
And Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Okay, wonderful. So given the online meeting format, today's agenda, I want to review a few procedural items for those of you who are visitors to our meeting today. I'm first going to read a motion and ask for that motion to be moved and seconded. Staff will present the agenda item to the council. Council members are given an opportunity to ask questions, and if called upon by staff, an applicant may be asked to speak to a question. And then also, if an applicant has something that they would like to say to the council, they will be given an opportunity to do so as well. Once council questions have been addressed, we'll ask for any other members of the public who may wish to offer a statement to that agenda item. And at the conclusion of hearing from everybody, the council members will deliberate and a roll call that will be taken. And again, because of the online format, just some housekeeping things. So for public comment in our procedures, if you are visiting today and you would like to ask a question about an agenda item, offer a comment, we ask that you raise your hand so that staff can identify you. I can't see everybody on the screen all at the same time. We'd ask when you're called upon to speak to state your name and affiliation for the record. We ask that you address the specific agenda item being considered at that particular time. If you have written statements that you wish to offer, they can be emailed to Jonathan Kinney, which is JONATHAN KINNEY @ct.gov. Council members take comments from the public. We do not respond to questions. And at the conclusion, we will thank you and we'll move on and call the next person. So the next boilerplate item is the Code of Conduct Conflict of Interest. The following is the Historic Preservation Council policy regarding conflict of interest. The Historic Preservation Council votes on matters which provide leadership and economic benefit to property owners, consultants, local governments, and not-for-profit organizations. Given this responsibility and to maintain the highest professional standards in the discharge of our duties, it is important to maintain a strong code of ethics for all council members and department employees. In order to avoid possible violations of the Department of Economic and Community Development Ethics Statement, it is necessary for the council to be aware of any situations in which there's real potential or apparent conflict of interest involving anyone here. A conflict of interest may occur when a public agency's public officials, participation in agency matters may result in personal financial gain. You have been provided a copy of the DECD ethics statement and governing state statutes. Having reviewed them and today's agenda, members of the council and staff are now asked to disclose any affiliation with entities or projects that may create a conflict of interest as defined by agency policy and pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-79 through 1-89, entitled Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Once disclosed, the member or staff may recuse themselves from that particular agenda item. Having read this statement, are there any council members or staff who wish to disclose a conflict of interest? Margaret? Margaret, your audio is off.
Yes, no, I'm good. So I'm a member of the Middlesex YMCA, but I had nothing to do with their application, didn't know they were applying, and have no financial gain. Just wanted to disclose that.
Thank you for identifying that, Margaret. Are there any others? Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the review and the approval of the February 3rd, 2021 minutes. Are there corrections to the minutes as presented? Margaret, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few. On page 3 is the first one, item 5A, the third paragraph down. It's Elizabeth Malloy of the Haddam Historical Society, not Higginham. Okay, and then on page 6, it's item 5C in the third paragraph, just a typo. Canning is a small c, it just needs to be a capital C. And then on page 7, it is item 6A, the 7th paragraph, I think, and it was when I spoke. And what I was saying is the text that was crossed out that needed to be eliminated also had a footnote that needed to be eliminated along with it. So it wasn't totally clear from the minutes. Thanks.
Understood. Okay, thank you, Margaret. Are there other council members with comments or corrections? The only thing that I saw that my memory is questioning is on page 3 under State Historic Preservation Grant 5A, under the second paragraph, where it talks about Ms. Christine Nelson lives in the area. That's the start of the paragraph, and then it goes on to say, Ms. Nelson noted that the application mentions workers' housings in the area where the male factory workers lived. I think that was actually Kathy. I happen to agree that that was a really good point, but I don't think I made it. So I think we'll give that to Kathy. Any other corrections to the minutes? All right. Not hearing any, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
So moved, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. As second?
Marguerite, second.
Thank you, Marguerite. Okay, roll call vote for those in favor. Marguerite Cornell?
Aye.
Margaret Faber?
Aye.
Karen Gilvark?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Christine Nelson?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstained. Sarah Sportman?
Aye.
And Walter Woodward?
Aye.
Okay. Now we will move on to agenda item 5A. Just bring that motion up. Okay. Agenda item 5A, the Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is Arts and Crafts Association, doing business as Gallery 53. The project is consulting services of a 36 CFR qualified architect and appropriate team to prepare a condition assessment of 53 Colony Street 1894 Meriden, and the grant amount is $20,000. Motion to move?
So made, Christine.
Christine, okay, and a second?
Karen, I'll second.
Okay,
Good.
Mary?
Hi, good morning,
Hi.
everybody. So staff does recommend approval of this application. Aaron and I actually met with the board and staff of Gallery 53 in Meriden. I believe they originally wanted to come in for a Historic Restoration Fund grant, but as is customary, we usually ask applicants to take a step back to kind of assess the whole situation of the resource before honing in on any work they think is required, unless, it's an emergency situation like a roof replacement or something like that. So David Cooley is here to answer any questions that I can't. So does council have any questions or concerns?
Margaret?
Hi, I just wondered what you predict you'll need the legal support service for in the budget?
Yes, the organization does retain an attorney pro bono. They may not need this, but to pay for any legal admin. And the reason for this is that the building is, they do own their discernible portion of the building, but 53 Colony is actually it's one building, but two separate owned parts. And so I believe that was just to explore, and Dave can maybe clarify further, but that was just in case there are any issues that arise that have to do with ownership and access. The condition assessment is for the exterior of the entire building, but only the interior of the part that's owned by Gallery 53.
Oh, thank you.
Well said. And just to clarify, yeah, there's in the deeds, there's some fuzziness around the common wall and the roof ownership and things like that. So it'd be good to get that cleaned up as part of this whole process. So that we put some admin budget in there for that. So, and thanks for the opportunity.
So this is Sarah. I've got one question, which is, are there existing floor plans already for the building?
Want me to take that, Mary?
Yeah, I think we discussed this in the pre
Yeah,
meeting.
the art gallery has been an ongoing and running operation, and the 51 side, which was really a hoarder situation up until recently. An owner took it over and cleaned it all out, and so he's got floor plans for potential activity there that are all approved by the city for the most part. And the layout of the gallery is such that if we can do some modifications with your help, we can actually utilize an extra floor for revenue generating activity. So that's going to be part of this process. So we don't have, the vision floor plan at this stage, but that I can imagine would come out of this.
I actually wasn't asking about the vision floor plan. It was just the existing condition floor plan, because the scope of the work that you're talking about for a conditions assessment, possibly documenting the issues with the roof and the building structure, would start with having a good existing condition floor plan. So that's sometimes that we ask that question just to suggest that be included in the scope of work for the grant. And, Mary, obviously this is something you'll be working with the applicant, but, just trying to give them everything they need.
Yeah, and part of the RFP or part of the deliverable is to start with whatever is existing recorded, and then from there, perhaps, see what might be required to move forward with the work.
We may have it. I just haven't seen it because I haven't looked for it. But that's a good point. So we'll make sure we get it together there.
Yeah, that will help your legal issue too.
Yeah, that for sure. Thank you.
I'm just out of curiosity, what was the HRF funded project that you were bringing forward, or you wanted to bring forward? Was that for an emergency repair?
Well, the roof is definitely a priority. We're not in emergency mode yet, and actually, I think they had a couple roofing contractors convinced them they needed a new roof, and I've been up there since with others that say that's not necessarily the case. So we need the experts that are unbiased coming out of this project to really understand what's happening with the roof. We know we need some repointing of the building exterior. We have some peeling paint, as these buildings tend to have. So it's just time for us to take a step back and do a holistic look at everything, so that whatever comes out of this then will lead to whatever we need for the historic restoration funds. But we know we need a lot of work. So we're excited to partner with you guys.
Mary, my recommendation is when the RFP language comes together, that part of the team include actually a true roofing consultant. Because if the owner is getting sort of different perspectives from different roofers, you want somebody who's really versed at delving deeply into roofing issues to give an unbiased opinion. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, that's a big part of what we're looking for, is that unbiased opinion, because we really haven't had that yet. But we definitely have water coming in, so it's urgent, but not urgency yet.
And I also had a question that was forwarded to me in terms of the solutions on page 13 of the grant. So there's the condition assessment, and then there's the solutions. And just this was from Tom Elmore, one of our council members who couldn't be here today, and he just wanted to clarify with you what your understanding of solutions was. Is this just, as we're talking about the roofing, sort of the definitive information about, yes, you've got 1 year or 5 years left on the roof, or are you looking for something more than that? And we're asking from a budget standpoint.
Right. From the roofing perspective, that's certainly what we're looking for. Do we have, I think we have, with some repair work, I think we have at least 5 years, but then the question is, what's the best long-term solution? The other solution aspect of this in our minds is what I referred to a little bit earlier, was how do we get more out of the building by some access and egress issues that we know exist, but we need some professional help with there, because the stairways, just kind of where they're located, et cetera, there may be some fairly simple things we can do to get more out of the building. So that's one of the solutions we're hoping an architect, with some vision can help us with.
Sort of what schematic conceptual approaches, in other words.
Yeah, at this stage, for sure.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? I don't see any raised hands. Any members of the public to speak to this application? Mr. Cooley, anything else that you'd like to offer?
No, just, for context, this building is 127. You guys deal with these old buildings all the time, so that's understood. But it's kind of the heart and soul of our downtown. It's an ongoing concern that's been around a long time. I think we say that we're the oldest continuously operating arts and crafts association in Connecticut, and this timing of obviously COVID has hurt everybody and hurt the gallery, but you guys relaxing the match here is a big factor for us, and so we're at a turning point, and this is an important piece of what we're looking for to plan for the future. So we appreciate everybody's support. Thanks so much.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve this grant. A roll call vote. Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Margaret Faber.
Sorry, aye.
Karen Gilbert.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Christine Nelson.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstained. Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Agenda item 5B. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant is administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the New Milford Trust for Historic Preservation. The project is consulting services of a 36 CFR qualified architect and appropriate team to prepare a condition assessment of the Nathaniel Taylor Charles Barlow home, 1774, 34 Main Street, New Milford, and the grant amount is $20,000. Is there a motion to move?
Marguerite, so moved.
And a second?
Margaret, second.
Okay. Thank you. Mary?
Hi. So staff recommends approval of this application as well. Actually, about 2 years ago, Alyssa Lozapone and I met with Greg Farmer down in New Milford on some other business, and we walked by this house, and he kind of pointed out that it might be, coming down the line for some assistance. And so we did receive this application, obviously recently. And the organization, has this new resource, and I think the first best step is to, again, take a step back and just do a look at what they have and what they might need to do to help, restore and rehab the resource before they can move forward with actually using it. They will probably come in for, a feasibility study afterwards, and architectural plans and specifications to explore work, and eventually probably an HRF grant. But I don't think Rob Burkhart from the organization is here, but I will try to answer any questions or concerns that you have.
Thank you, Mary. Margaret?
Okay. So I was just wondering, on page 7, you probably just addressed this, but they're asking for recommendations for potential uses and a revenue stream. And I think that falls under the realm of the feasibility study. So I'm wondering how in depth they're planning to go within this conditions assessment.
So, yeah, I mean, this happens a lot. And we always advise that, especially without the match, 20,000 is not going to cover a lot more than the condition assessment. And so there won't be any, feasibility, in-depth feasibility recommendations. But as a team is in there and assessing, what the conditions are, it's sometimes helpful to have an idea of what the organization might have in mind. So that has been addressed with the applicant, but what will come out of this application or this grant, if it's awarded, will be a standard condition assessment with recommendations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Karen, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I agree with Margaret Faber's point. I was concerned about that, to what extent, and it is hard, as you say, to go back and forth. Want to make sure the grounds, if any, are part of this condition assessment.
They're generally not. Are you talking about historic landscape or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or, potential remnants of other buildings or additions, what have you.
Yeah.
And then secondly, there seems to be a lot of contents. Is any of that collectionable material? Is that going to be assessed, or is that just a whole nother project?
That would be a whole nother project. We might recommend that they apply for an IMLS grant or a collections assessment. As we've discussed before in previous meetings, when we're talking about an historic resource that also houses a lot of potentially significant content, the two kind of have to go hand in hand. Right now, though, that might extend more to the execution phase. Right now, though, the condition assessment is just to literally assess what the issues are and make recommendations for moving forward. I think in the next phase, the collections will become more of a part of the conversation about what kind of work needs to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Karen. Other questions? Mary, Tom Elmore had forwarded me a question. which sort of speaks in part to what Karen was just talking about, which is the landscape, the site, and just the concern that when potential future uses are talked about, there's an impact of the town's off-street parking regulations on site development and on the historic site. And so enumerating what those features are that are part of the historic site is important. And then also for the consultant team, if they are going to be reviewing potential opportunities, that they take into account the zoning requirements too, because that can really alter the context of the building.
Yep.
Karen, okay, I see both Karen and Marguerite. Karen first. Nope. Marguerite?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the standard question about existing drawings and make sure that that's included in the scope if they're not available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always a question when we're discussing the application, and then of course once the RFP is being developed, it becomes part of it. But I think this obviously is a significant component, and so I think moving forward, we might make that a standard question even in the application, so that they can address it up front, so that council knows what the situation is.
That's an excellent idea, Mary.
Okay.
Any other council member questions? Are there any members of the public who wish to offer any comments? Okay, not hearing any. On a roll call vote, we've had a motion to approve and a second. The motion to approve, Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Margaret Faber.
Aye.
Karen Gilvark.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Christine Nelson.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstained. Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
And Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 5C. 5C, the Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the Middlesex YMCA. The project is consulting services of a 36 CFR qualified architectural historian to prepare a National Register nomination for the Northern Middlesex YMCA Building 1927, 99 Union Street, Middletown, and the grant amount is $10,000. Is there a motion to move?
I'll move. Margaret?
And a second?
Karen, no second.
Okay, great. So Maureen, our state register coordinator and our national register coordinator looked at this together and agreed that an individual national register nomination is appropriate for this resource. The budget of $10,000 also is. We agree that that's probably going to be enough for a consultant. So we do recommend this application. Deanna Deng and Michelle Rolnick are both here, I believe, from the Middlesex Y, who might be able to answer any questions that I can't.
Are there council member questions about this application?
It's,
Margaret?
sorry, having some trouble today. So it's just probably a typo, a little technicality on the project timeline. Exhibit D, it says receive SHPO survey and planning grant approval 3/1/21, but if they get our approval, it's the 3rd.
Yep. Okay.
And there are a few other things about that schedule that probably need to be tweaked as well.
Yeah, that's I actually made some notes about that. So much is dependent on when it starts, when the review board meets, editing. So if they're awarded the grant, we will definitely revise that timeline accordingly.
Are there other council member questions?
Karen?
Yes, Karen.
Just, is, are the site and landscaping going to be assessed as to whether they should be part of the nomination?
I think that's a general consideration. The consultant will coordinate with Jenny, once, if the grant's awarded and once they're hired, and then that will become, part of what they think the nomination will consist of. But generally, especially for an individual listing, the site is also, identified and explored.
Thanks, Mary.
This is Jenny. So in recent years, we have added sections to the National Register nomination to better recognize landscape features and the whole property. So we have now a setting section, and certainly are paying close attention to landscape. On this site, it's mostly, I believe, reaching the FAR, so it's mostly built out. There's not a lot of landscape there. But it is something we include in the National Register stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
And Tom Elmore forwarded a question to me. He wanted to double check because it was such a large building. I think it was 81,000 square feet. That the cost that you've identified is sufficient for a building of this size.
I always consult with Jenny and Marina just to make sure that they're asking for enough. And I believe, I think Jenny agreed that 10,000 should cover it, to put it crassly.
Yeah, it's an individual property, so it's only one site that you would need to visit to do field work. And I feel comfortable that it would not be an excessive amount of field time to document, to photograph and take notes about the property. It has some pretty distinct eras of construction also. So there's a 1930s earlier portion that has consistent features, and then some additions off the back. But we feel comfortable that because it's one site and we're aware of the themes that would be researched, that it could be done for that.
Okay.
Outside of this meeting, I always look for feedback from consultants, though, if we're not hitting the target. But I feel pretty comfortable with that amount for this.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. Are there any other council questions? Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this agenda item? Okay. Not hearing any. We have a motion and a second to approve this. On a roll call vote, Marguerite Carnell,
Aye.
Margaret Faber,
Aye.
Karen Gilvarg,
Aye.
Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Christine Nelson,
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstain, Sarah Sportman,
Aye.
and Walter Woodward.
Aye.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
So agenda item 5D. Sorry, I'm just juggling things on my screen to bring up the language to the side of Zoom. Okay, have it. Agenda item 5D. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a Partners in Preservation grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, doing business as Preservation Connecticut. The project is documentation of landscapes in Connecticut designed by Frederick Law Olmsted Sr. and the Olmsted firm. The grant amount is $175,000. Is there a motion to move this?
So moved. Christine.
Karen, okay. And a second?
Seconded, Christine.
Christine, all right.
Okay. Thank you. So staff recommends approval of this application. Speaking of landscapes, despite the substantial role that Frederick Law Olmsted Sr. and the firm, played in Connecticut well into the 20th century, we don't have a lot of formally documented information. And so, as the application explores with the oncoming of the 200th anniversary, it's very important, or we feel it's very important that Connecticut, at least have an example to look to. And beyond just the Olmsted documentation, this will help immensely because it will be producing a landscape survey form, which can be used for other projects. And so we think the benefits address our state plan, address the issue of landscape documentation, and then this particular subject itself. Jenny or myself, or I believe Chris Wiegren might be on the call, we can answer any questions you have.
So let's start with council member questions. Christine.
Thank you. I wondered, is the American Society of Landscape Architects involved at all? Because they are great at celebrating Olmsted every year.
Yes. So the National Association of Olmsted Parks has generated this nationwide initiative, and they are essentially activating state, local, national groups to do something to celebrate Olmsted and recreation, awareness, and landscape. So they're leading the effort to do something. Connecticut ASLA is absolutely engaged in that. Chris Wiegren, Jane, and I were scheduled to have a meeting yesterday with them actually to coordinate efforts, and I lost power, so we didn't get to do that. But Connecticut ASLA is looking to update their Olmsted Trail website. And from what I understand, they're not actually going to be doing a physical survey. They're going to be looking to augment their website with research materials. So that dovetails into our project. And it also fulfills a need that NAOP has, which is to fill out information on their existing Olmsted online website. So the National Association of Olmsted Parks has the olmstedonline.org website where you can actually use an interactive map of Olmsted firm projects. And it links to the various archives that have materials digitized already, but it could also link to other information such as the survey forms that we collect, or NAOP is also looking for primary source materials that may not be in the National Archives. And by national, there are multiple places where Olmsted firm documents are kept, but there may be some other materials that are more local that they have not accessed yet. So this project, works well with those. Barbara Yeager is on our little advisory group here. She is part of Connecticut ASLA and also on the board of NAOP. And we have some other members that are part of ASLA. And then just so you know, there are a lot of other groups who are planning events that are related to the missions of their organizations. So I know that CLHO is looking into this and what they can do. So but in terms of history, in terms of looking at it from a history perspective, we're still missing this piece of what is so important about Connecticut in the story, because there's so many national monographs about Olmsted and Olmsted firm and Olmsted's legacies that only mention Connecticut in passing and don't really focus on it. So I'm hoping that this can sort of be a jumping off point for a lot of other things too.
Terrific.
That was a long answer.
Thank you, Jenny. Walter has a question.
Yeah, this is just a point of information for me. I'm just curious. do landscape designers or historians make a distinction between the projects that were actually designed by Olmsted and the ones designed by the firm later on? Because there are so many Olmsted projects in America, it defies, it defies numeration. I'm just wondering how that's done. And in Connecticut, how many of the projects are Olmsted projects that he was involved in himself, and how many are legacy or descendant projects?
Great question.
Yes, the answer is yes. There's absolutely a distinction. A lot of the Connecticut projects, I think, are actually the sons, so sort of the first generation of Olmsted legacy. There is an effort to document the actual designer, and there's also an effort within this community to understand sort of the framework Olmsted Sr. established for training, because even when he didn't fully design something, even when he just provided advice in a letter or something like that, he didn't like to leave people unable to then maintain and care for the landscape. So there was an effort of education and training that's part of this legacy. I know NAOP is interested in highlighting that, and also are looking for designers who contributed to projects who may not be as upfront in the paperwork. But in terms of Connecticut, Olmsted's start is here. His inspiration was here, and a lot of his ideals started to form while he was here looking at the Farmington River Valley. So that's really important. That's well known, but how that connects to what else is in Connecticut is less told.
Thank you, Jenny. Karen, you had a question too.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited about this project. Sort of following on Walter's question or concern, there are, I think, a lot of Olmsted influenced projects. I think, again, this is from memory, so don't take it as fact, but I think Edgewood Park is sometimes credited to Olmsted, but it was really his correspondence with Donald Grant Mitchell, which was prodigious and went on for decades, that yielded the design. Yet when you go to the Olmsted archive, there are pictures of before and after of certain places in Edgewood Park. So he was clearly tracking it. Also, I'll just note that there's a rendering of West River Memorial Park, which is an original rendering, which I don't think I've seen anywhere in the materials, and there may be other original materials at the City of New Haven. They will probably deny that they have any because it's such a pain to look for them, but I'm happy to help out anybody who wants to go through that archive. So very excited.
Thank you.
Jenny, I have a question, and with everybody else, think that this is just an amazing and terrific opportunity. And my question comes down to budgeting, because I always look at things as a consultant, and I'm thinking about what's the expectation for the product. And in the nomination or application, it gets down and talks about 298 landscape commissions. And I looked at the Preservation Connecticut's budget, so the breakdown of the 175,000, there's 85,000 for the actual sites, and it's a two-part question. So how much primary research, what are the goals for each of these sites from a product standpoint? Because it looks like you're really only allocating about 1 3/4 to 3 hours, depending upon the hourly rate per site. And I wondered if you could walk me through kind of what the expectation is, and then how this budget was developed.
It's actually 8 hours per form. But don't forget, there's also 65,000 for the context. So a lot of research time will be included in the writing of the context, and there should be, I would expect that some of the research for the context and understanding of the distribution of sites and the types of sites will be done as part of the context. For the forms, you'll see there's 298 Olmsted firm commissions that are documented. We expect that we won't have legal access to all of those. And there also may be a few that might be a quick visit because the site's destroyed or it's already, Waveney, for example, is already National Register listed property. But the expectation for the inventory form would be that it's a reconnaissance level form. It will be similar to our buildings form, but improved and obviously appropriate for landscapes. And we also expect that we will try to help assist in access and clustering fieldwork so that you're not driving, from Litchfield to Stratford on one day, that you would be doing the field work in clustered regions. You look like you still have a question.
Well, no, I was just thinking about, because you said actually it's 8 hours per site, which, starting with the 85,000, are you combining the 85,000 plus the 65,000, and that's how you're getting the 8 hours per site?
No, so I have in here, I'm actually looking at the application, so it's eight hours per form for 150 forms at a, sort of average hourly rate. And there's a little bit of a buffer in there.
Okay, and what's the average hourly rate?
So I put in an average hourly rate just to get this estimation of $65 an hour, which is what a mid-level person might bill out at. And that allows some flexibility because obviously if you have a lower level person doing it, they're cheaper, but might take more time, or, different firms might have different types of staff doing it. But I've been doing some research on that, and I think that's a pretty good estimation. And this is just a basis to work off of. I think different potential bidders might work the numbers differently. But I do think this is enough. It's 8 hours per form. We have some buffer in here. If we can't actually get to 150 properties, that's okay. What we really want to achieve is understanding where they are in Connecticut and what the status of the places are. What are they? Are they intact? Are they altered? NEOP actually did some study of that with aerial imagery. They had an intern that studied which ones were demolished just by looking at aerials. So some of that's been done too. Okay. But I think in terms of the effort, in terms of filling out the form, you're going to have a lot of the research done under the context part. What you really need to do is get out there and photograph and observe any other features that are extant or altered and describe that.
Okay. I'm seeing Marguerite's hand.
Sure.
Thank you, Sarah. So just following on to Sarah's comment, as a consultant, I felt like the hourly rate is a little lean. I think you would, and maybe you already have, consider having a senior person training at least for the first few days so that more junior staff know what to look for, because there can be subtleties in landscape, just like reading a building, that can be easily missed if you don't know what you're looking for, in a survey. So just wanted to raise that as a concern and just ask the question. So is the budget also including the travel time? Is that 8 hours of form including getting to the site? Because I understand that you'll be as efficient as possible, but is that included in this budget?
Yeah, I mean, again, it sort of depends. I can't estimate how every different firm, which has a lot of different organizational structures, might work the hours. But yes, I would hope that whether you're in state or out of state, I did not put in like an overnight budget for this. We did consider where we might advertise this and have talked to Connecticut ASLA about posting this on their website. Yeah, I mean, the 8 hours per form has to include the travel. If that doesn't work, again, there's $7,000 buffer. So when I'm saying 8 hours per form, there's an extra $7,000 within the 78,000. That's sort of a buffer space. And there is also, you know, a big chunk for doing the context. But I would think you have a regular work day, you go to several sites in one day, you probably are doing several in 1 week, and not driving every single day to go to one place.
I am seeing Walter's hand. Is that a new question, Walter? Maybe not. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. No, it's a failure to put my hand down. So sorry.
Okay. All right. So are there any other council member questions? So Jenny, what I'm hearing is overall enthusiasm and, you know, tremendous support for the project, and but just wanting to make sure that there's actually sufficient funds to get the breadth and depth of the product that you're looking for from people with enough experience who can really, you know, generate that in-depth knowledge. So if in fact, I mean, you at this point you don't have the form yet, you're working on it, and you're going to be taking the perspectives of different consultants to kind of put together the form, or you have a consultant team for this endeavor, is that correct?
Yeah, that's in the proposal, and Jane Montanero's on here too, so I don't, if Jane wants to speak, should allow her some time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've been working for about 4 years now with basically an advisory group that we put together that includes members, you know, Phil Barlow and Tom Elmore, Christina from Groundworks, Barbara Yeager, and early on we were also working more directly with NEOP. So yes, I will be creating the landscape inventory form with lots of advice. And then, you know, we'll be able to probably try it out, practice it, and refine it if we need to through this exercise. And then that's something that we will have as an option for survey, that people can use that form in the future for anything. It doesn't have to be Olmsted.
And that form would be the basis of the RFP that then gets developed.
The form is not the basis of the RFP. That's an inventory form.
Well,
I don't
I don't mean the base. I mean that it is not a deliverable, but it is part of the RFP package, so somebody knows what it is that they're completing when they're responding to the RFP.
Sure. Yeah. We will have a draft of that. I put in here that we would post the RFP within 4 weeks of award of the grant. So that gives us a month to get that form drafted and looked at by landscape historians.
Jane or Chris, did either one of you want to talk about this project at all?
Hi, it's Jane Montanaro. Thank you for this robust conversation about the application. We are really looking forward to this project. I know Chris has, extensive background in landscape. He did a sabbatical several years ago studying cultural landscapes. So we are really looking forward to administering this grant program, this grant. And I've been taking notes on your enthusiasm for offers for archival access. Karen will be contacting you, and when we mention it among our board members, we've gotten similar responses. So we're tracking a lot of folks who have offered assistance. And I think, in addition to this being a wonderful scholarship tool, it's going to be a wonderful engagement tool for us as well. And we'll be really looking forward to how we can promote the work that the consultants are doing on our social media channels and our programming and our newsletter, and partnering with all the other groups that are actively promoting Olmsted's work this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this agenda item? Okay. We have a motion to approve in a second. A roll call vote of those in favor of Marguerite Cornell.
Aye.
Margaret Faber.
Aye.
Karen Gilvarg.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Christine Nelson.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstained. Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
And Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Agenda item. It's our agenda item 8A. So this is to recall to the table the grant application for the First Church of Christ Congregational in Suffield, Connecticut. So I need a motion to recall this to the table.
Marguerite, so moved.
Okay, and a second.
I'll second, Margaret.
Okay, so now we need the vote to recall. Marguerite Cornell,
Aye.
Margaret Faber,
Aye.
Karen Gilvarg,
Aye.
Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Christine Nelson,
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstained, Sarah Sportman,
Aye.
and Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Okay, all right, now it's been recalled to the table. Is Erin here to present the supplemental information?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great.
So First Church of Christ Congregational in Suffield is asking for a $35,000 grant for repainting of the exterior wooden surfaces, doors, windows, door frames, and trim. And at the last meeting, Tom Elmore raised concern about the impact of a lift on the gravestones in the cemetery that abuts the building. So I had a phone call with the applicant, George Marion, and connected him with the town, Tom Elmore, and the owners of the cemetery, which is actually the First School Society, I believe it's called. So they were able to all get permission to do these repairs above the cemetery, and they discussed a sensitive way to set up staging and to paint the windows. They realized that there will only be 2 in close proximity to the windows that need to be repainted, and so they've come up with a plan to do this sensitively, and the contractor that they are working with has had experience doing something similar to this before, so he feels confident that he can do this. So I was happy to see the applicant get in touch with Tom Elmore, who I believe is from Suffield, and they made a game plan together. So that was the first thing that the council was interested in learning more about. The second was the budget. And so the council wanted more information about how the applicant determined the budget. So they used a quote for $61,000, which you can see in the materials I've included. We typically add in a 20% contingency for the project, which would be about $12,000. But because the applicant only has about $35,000 to spend, their contingency was cut down to include the cost of the SHPO sign and not to include the $35,000 match. So that is how they were able to determine the budget that they wanted to put forward. And you can see the estimate in the supplemental materials. And I believe the last question was about the number of windows that would be included in this quote. And so the applicant put in a new scope of work. And so I believe it's about 32 windows. And those were the updates that the council was interested in finding more information about. And I'm happy to address any other questions.
Erin, this is Sarah. I just want to clarify, I don't think Tom was working directly with the applicant. That doesn't sound right to me.
He wasn't working directly with him. I just put him in touch so he could discuss his concerns with the applicant, and Tom knew the town official to contact. So it was more that he made connections for us. He's not benefiting from this application in any way.
Oh, I know he's not benefiting from
Okay.
it, but it just, council members don't usually work on a particular application on the side, so to speak. So I just wanted to clarify that his role here was, he was just making an introduction, it sounds like, to somebody.
Exactly.
Okay. So do council members have further questions about this application based on the additional information that's submitted? And Karen, is that your hand I'm seeing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay, there.
I think there's a typo in the budget. It comes out to $70,050 at some point, and that doesn't actually add up. I think the 50 is extra. So minor error, but I'm sorry, I don't have which page that is on, but I can always find that and follow up with Eric.
Okay.
The summary budget page, I think on the forms, the department forms.
I will make a note.
That's on page 21 of the application. Okay. Other comments or questions? All right. And I'll just note that typo on the budget does not change the math for the grant amount, which is what we're voting on, which is the 35,000. Okay. All right. So let me reread the original motion now, because that would be what we'll be voting on. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below-listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below-listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the First Church of Christ Congregational in Suffield. The project is repainting of the church's exterior wooden surfaces, including doors, windows, and door frames and trim, and related areas such as tower louvers and trim, exterior paneling, and portico ceilings. The grant amount is $35,000. So we had the original motion was moved and it was seconded. So now this would be a vote in favor. On a roll call vote, Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Margaret Faber.
Aye.
Karen Gilbard.
Aye.
Thea Glazer.
Aye.
Christine Nelson.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson abstained. Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
And Walter Woodward.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, so on to agenda item 11, the report on the State Historic Preservation Office. Jonathan.
Good morning, everyone. Jonathan Kinney with the SHPO. I just wanted to take a very brief moment and commend the SHPO staff. They have been working extremely hard over the past couple months, and not only on their regular program work, but also special projects. An example of that is the fantastic Olmsted project that you just heard, and in addition to that, also the preparation for these meetings. There's a lot of work that goes into these, specifically, especially when there's a SEPA hearing. So kudos to the SHPO staff as always. One of the other things that SHPO staff has been working very hard on is Federal Advocacy Week, and I have asked Mary Dunn if I could impose on her for a minute or two to just share with council. She has been working very hard to set up meetings, and I was hoping that she could just summarize those efforts for everyone. Mary?
Sure. Okay, and I'll take like 1 minute.
Yeah.
But every year, usually in the second week of March, the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Offices and Preservation Action, the national group, co-sponsor a week-long Preservation Advocacy Week. We generally send at least 1 or 2 staff down there. We were geared up to go last year, but got called back because of the stay-at-home order. And so this year it will be taking place next week, but virtually, which actually helps provide a little more flexibility because we can have more staff included in the meetings. The meetings take place over 3 days, but on Wednesday we try to meet with each member of our congressional delegation. And so we're fortunate that we can have more people on those calls because they'll be virtual. The main ask is that they continue to support the Historic Restoration Fund, which is obviously a congressional appropriation. We've been quite successful. Obviously, it's, we still have it, but not only that, but the amounts have been increasing every year, which is a great help to our office. And then, of course, there's always other legislative issues that we need to address that sometimes have to do with 106 review or Department of Transportation. So that's what's going on next week. A lot of staff will be participating, as well as, I believe, Kathy Maher, of course, she usually goes down in person, but she'll be participating virtually. I think Leah might be sitting in on some of the meetings. But it's just really a good opportunity to network with other SHPOs and also just get a national perspective on what's going on with historic preservation and how we can tap our congressional delegation to help forward the national program.
Thank you, Mary. And Thank you, Sarah. Back to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Agenda item 12, report on the museum properties. Liz, good morning.
Good morning. So just really quickly, I don't want to dwell on things. Everybody has been really busy getting ready for reopening. Eric Sloan and Newgate plan to reopen in May for a regular season, essentially. Their sites have a lot of outdoor space and their insides are quite spacious. Reopening in Henry Whitfield is a little bit more complicated because of the building architecture in the house and in the visitor center. So we're a little bit on hold with that, but I believe the plan is June for them. We really want to have the museum staff vaccinated in order to open. That would be a best case scenario, but that remains to be seen. Our staff are all over the spectrum in terms of age. The commissioner of DECD, David Lehman, is really optimistic that the majority of folks will be vaccinated by June in Connecticut. We're currently, as of yesterday, at 8%. So the other thing that's going on is we're waiting on the implementation of a new point of sale system, which doesn't sound like it should be a big deal, but it's kind of a big deal because of the transfer of data from the old system to the new, as well as the implementation of an online sales platform, which we didn't have before. And then the caveat for all of this is it needs to interface with the financial systems that are used by DECD's finance office. So it's a little more complicated than one would think because, we're the state and things are complicated in the state. Substantial completion date of July for the work at the Prudence Crandall Museum. Really, this is going to be pending work on the archaeology that needs to be done before the ramp is put in, but most everything else I believe should be done by that time. And it's kind of exciting as we move forward. Joni DiMartino, who's the curator there, is currently scheduling presentations with sort of about the Prudence Crandall story and the history of the museum, but we're using those presentations very deliberately as focus groups. They're really double duty presentations to aid us in interpretive planning. So we pretty much know where we're going to go, and we're using these to test where we want to go with the interpretation and to see what resonates. And it's really exciting because we're actually beginning to do some work with other state agencies. So our next presentation is with the state's judicial branch. There's over 130 folks in the branch that have signed on for this particular presentation, and they reached out to us. So we're really excited about that potential collaboration moving forward. So yeah, we've been approved to hire up to 7 seasonal employees. Human Resources is working to get that up and running for us. And then finally, of course, Museums Advocacy Week has essentially passed, but the New England Museum Association is hosting a regional museum, statewide museum advocacy platforms and programs starting next week to follow up on the National Museums Advocacy Week. And I'll be presenting along with Jason at Connecticut Humanities and Amaris Williams from the CLHO will be presenting to folks who sign on for that. And I'll be talking specifically about state advocacy and some of the legislation that will be potentially affecting museums in the state of Connecticut. So really excited about that. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Liz. Jonathan, under new business, updates on the Historic Preservation Council appointments, so that you've got a few names that have come back.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to sum up again, we have 6 slots on the HPC that we'll be filling in hopefully the first half of this year. And those are 4 current members whose terms have expired, their second terms have expired, and that is Sarah Nelson, Dr. Faber, Karen Gilbard, and Kathy Marr. We also have the 2 slots that have been left open by the resignations of Mr. Jeffrey Partridge and Dr. Fiona Burnell. So those are the 6 spots that we have to fill. We have sent out, I believe it was 14 or 15 invitations to individuals all over the state to consider serving, to apply for consideration by the governor. We have heard affirmative responses from 5 of those people, and that is wonderful. Probably just as many have considered and declined due to conflicts or just not enough time to serve. So I'll be following up with the few individuals that we have not heard from. But in the interim, we have gathered the information from the people who have responded positively, and they have been sent some additional documentation that is required by the governor's office, which is a form that needs to be completed. Once we have all that documentation, those names will be forwarded. We're thinking right now that we're going to do 2 groups of 3 appointments. The plan is to do a first group, which is the 2 empty positions and 1 of the currently expired terms. That way we'll get hopefully some new members in that will be able to serve at least for a few months alongside the more experienced members on the council. And then the second group, we're thinking probably late spring, early summer to replace the additional 3 members. So that's where we are right now. And I hope to have some more information next month for you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Liaison with public and private agencies. I just want to mention we're at 10:45 right now. So part 2 is going to be starting in 15 minutes. So don't want to shortchange anybody on time, but I want to keep people focused on the timeline that we have for this agenda. So Jane or Mary, are you either of you on the line and wishing to make any updates?
Jane Montanaro, Preservation Connecticut. Just a quick reminder that Friday is the last day to submit nominations for the 2021 Connecticut Preservation Awards. So on our website, preservationct.org, it's an online application, and we look forward to seeing all the great projects coming in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Yeah, Jane.
Mary Falvey here. I'm
Yeah.
Mary Falvey here for Connecticut Preservation Action. So far, the legislative session is looking good. The governor's budget didn't indicate any desire to take any money from CIA. However, that is considered an off budget fund. So we will be looking as hard as we can to make sure nothing gets snuck in for that. And then we're also looking at Planning and Development Committee is holding a hearing this Friday on House Bill 6547, which involves putting together a working group regarding the protection and preservation of historic properties. We will be putting messages out in support. However, I believe we will be also requesting that a greater representation of the preservation groups be included. Right now, membership would only have Preservation Connecticut representative and 8 historical societies, but no mention of any of the local preservation groups like Hartford Preservation Alliance, New Haven, New London Landmarks, or Norworks. So just welcome. We had our annual meeting Monday, and we welcome Aaron Markovich, who is the new director of Connecticut Landmarks on our board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in the public forum? Okay, I don't see any hands. So we will adjourn part 1 of the council's 2-part meeting. We will reconvene at 11 a.m. on the Zoom platform. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Christine.
And a second?
Second, Margaret.
Okay, on a vote to adjourn part 1, Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
Margaret Faber?
Aye.
Karen Gilvarg?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Christine Nelson?
Aye.
Sarah Sportman?
Aye.
Walter Woodward?
Bye.
Oh, yeah, and I abstained. Okay, motion carries. We'll see you at 11 a.m. on Zoom.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.